Thanks so much for your time. I am Pius Kojobakai. Looking at our stories, commercial banks and other financial institutions will now be required to disclose willful defaulters in their audited financial statements. And this is part of a new set of regulatory measures announced by the Bank of Ghana. George Yafe has the rest of the story.
Speaking at a meeting with managing directors and chief executives of commercial banks, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Isiama, noted that these actions are part of measures aimed at protecting borrowers.
To this end, the Bank of Ghana will soon issue a directive, and the directive seeks to do a number of things. It seeks to address gaps optional user fees when it comes to cross-currency card transactions, and we seek to cap these at 2%. Secondly, we will require the mandatory disclosure of all applicable OIFs to customers before a transaction is completed.
The governor also announced new measures aimed at checking the high non-performing loans in the banking sector.
The measures will, for example, mandate write-offs of fully provisioned loans with no realistic recovery prospects, excluding related party exposures. It will cap NPL ratios at 10% of gross loans by December 2026. The measures will tighten restructuring rules requiring sustained repayment before reclassification. The measures will also enforce timely collateral recovery, especially for overdue loans. And then the measures will strengthen credit risk governance and require proof of effectiveness.
These new set of regulatory measures are also targeting online transactions and how financial institutions can also charge. The governor of the Bank of Ghana has been given more details on this reform.
We cannot allow this to continue, and so we want to put an end to this. The upcoming guidelines, which will be released soon, will bring clear, enforceable standards to both bank-led and non-bank digital lending models. The guidelines will set rules around, for example, licensing and authorization.
Dr. Isiama also indicated that they are targeting what can be described as right pricing by these financial institutions.
Now, let me be clear, colleagues. Such practices are unacceptable and must end. We expect all banks to review their pricing models and ensure that customer charges reflect ethical and commercially defensible standards.
The governor of the Bank of Ghana also revealed that they are working to strengthen governance at the bank level as well as the independence of boards of these financial institutions.
Now, let me state clearly, Ghana-based boards must not serve as rubber stamps for instructions issued from offshore. No. This undermines the very basis of effective governance and creates unacceptable regulatory blind spots. So the forthcoming directive will clarify that, first, local boards and management teams must retain genuine authority over all material credit decisions and risk management actions that are taken in Ghana.
The governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Isiama, noted that all these regulatory actions are aimed at firmly stabilizing the banking sector and protecting depositors.
George Yafe filed that report, and of course it is important we have this conversation on the back of this. Joining us via Zoom is the Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Banks, John Ewa. John, thank you so much for making time to speak to us here on Business Live. And first off, your thoughts about the raft of measures to be rolled out by the Bank of Ghana, targeting basically interest rate charges, price and recapitalization of banks, amongst others, and more importantly, disclosure of known defaulters. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, it's quite a laundry list of measures that the governor of the central bank announced to the public today. But we should also be mindful that in a lot of the instances, it was very clear that guidelines will be coming or directives will be coming. And there is a clear process in place that is established between the banking community and the central bank on how these guidelines and notices are issued. So obviously, there will be some consultation with the industry to also have our input and to fashion out the best possible way so we can get the desired outcome, which will be a win-win for the regulator, for the regulated entities, and also for the banking public. So it's quite a tall list of issues that the central bank has tabled to address in the coming days and weeks.
All right, let's get some specifics on this. A new requirement on LPLs and the capping, it's at 10%. What could be the impact on fresh lending?
Obviously, if, as the governor stated, if measures are put in place that sanitizes the lending environment, it will inure to the benefit of not just banks but to borrowers, alike. As it is now, where NPL is upwards of 22%, it makes lending very difficult and a risky business. So if we can put in processes that significantly brings down the non-performing loan ratio to the levels that the governor talked about, obviously we don't have the details, so we are not sure about the nature of the measures. But I'm sure it will involve some difficult discussions with the judiciary, the collateral registry, and all other key stakeholders that are within the ecosystem of the lending business. Once we are able to do that, it should be easy for the borrowing public to have easy access to loans at affordable price. Banks should also have the capacity to lend safely because you know that the environment has been cleaned up, so to speak. So it's to the benefit of the country if we are able to work together to achieve the target that the governor has stated.
Let's talk about pricing. They intend to target that as well. Are you concerned?
Which price? No. Let's be clear what the governor said.
Okay.
It's to do with what we call the optional issuance fee on payment card transactions. In simple language, if you use your bank card to buy something online, let's say from Amazon, there is a price that is quoted to you in dollars, and your account on which the card was issued is in Cedis. So in the environment when we had that significant depreciation, you would have gone there to see that the item costs $30, and you make purchase. The settlement of the transaction is not instant. By the time settlement takes place, maybe a day or two following your transaction, the rate would have moved. So banks have this optional issuance fee, which is more like a protective mechanism that enables banks to cover the cost in the event that there is a rate movement that results in a higher than anticipated transaction settlement bill. What the governor is saying is this, that now that the currency has maintained some stability, do we still need that up? And we currently have a cap of up to, I think, 7.5%. Do we still need that big room to take care of a potential depreciation in the currency, given the performance of the currency now? And his proposal is he's working around, a headroom of about 2%. Again, the devil is in the detail. We are on standby for the details as to how we can work together to achieve this.
All right. So finally, before we part company, I don't know what your members think of these measures realistically, but because there's been concern about the possible impact on the bottom line.
As I go through the list of the measures that the central bank wants to introduce, I cannot see one that works against the banking industry. It is to improve the ecosystem. You talk about the digital lending guideline. Obviously, what we are having now, where today there's this company advertising that we are providing lending on our platform, most of whom we don't even know where they are operating from. And the governor is saying we are going to introduce guidelines to guide the conduct of practitioners in this environment. It helps the industry. When I say the industry, the entire financial services industry. The governor talked about consumer protection pricing mechanism, which we have already spoken about, which is the OIF, the optional issuance fee. It's not like the banks are overcharging the customers, but it's clear that as the currency has maintained some stability, the window that enables banks to play in to take care of the potential depreciation has breached. And therefore, yes, it's 2% the number, that one I can't tell. We await the details. If you talk about the other issue on addressing high NPLs, as I said, high NPLs is a cost and a charge to the bank's capital levels. So if you want to accumulate capital, we should all work together to bring the level of non-performing loans down. The governor says it's going to work with banks and in the system to work out a mechanism that helps us to reduce the NPLs. The strengthening of local governance in the banks. And here, target is obviously international banks and the regional banks. What the governor is saying is you cannot put a board in place in Ghana and decision making is offshore. The board that you have put in place on whom the governor or the central bank has performed fit and proper tests on the directors, they are supposed to be the ones taking the decisions for the regulated entity in Ghana. And I don't see how this will be a negative to the banking industry. So it is all aimed at sanitizing the financial system, and in that direction, we are very much in the same room with the government.
John Iwa, Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Banks, I truly appreciate the time speaking to me here on Business Live. Now, let's shift focus to the presidency now, because President John Mahama has revealed that he has held discussions with the finance minister and the governor of the Bank of Ghana regarding the performance of the cedi. According to him, they believe the real value of the cedi lies between 10 and 12 cedis to the US dollar. Now, speaking during a visit by the Federation of Ghanaian Exporters, he explained that such a range will help encourage exports while preventing imports from becoming so cheap that can flood the local market.
The economy is responding quite positively to the budget, and you can see it in the appreciation of the cedi, the reduction in the deficit, and general macroeconomic stability, return of investor confidence, and all that. And so I can assure you that in managing the economy together with the Minister of Finance, the governor of the bank, you can count on us to make sure that we manage the economy properly. Because if we don't, it affects your businesses. When the economy goes out of gear, it affects your businesses directly. And so I can assure you that we will continue to prudently manage the economy so that you have a predictable environment in which you can make investments, knowing that your return on investments would keep your businesses going. The recent appreciation in the value of the cedi is one that we have kept watching. As the cedi started to strengthen and the dollar depreciated, with our A-level economics, we all know that it's a balance between imports and exports. What it means is that it makes your imports cheaper and your exports more expensive. And so there must be a fair balance to try and achieve the true value of the cedi. Some people say, oh, it will come down to 4. But of course, we know the true value of the cedi is not 4. And if it went as far down as 4, it will kill all your export businesses. And so myself, the governor, and the finance minister met and discussed it. And they think that the real value of the cedi is anywhere between 10 and 12. Luckily, the Forex auction has brought it to just above 10, and it appears to have stabilized there. So I think that going forward, anything between 10, 11, and 12 as a band where the cedi operates will be a fair value, both to encourage our exports, but at the same time not make imports so cheap that importers will flood our markets with toothpicks and biscuits and coconut and all those kinds of things.
Now, the stock market rally is expected to continue through the second and third quarters of 2025, driven by favorable corporate earnings and a recovery in economic activity. According to Data Bank research, given these positive backdrops, it reiterates its expectation of the Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index closing around 6.85% by the end of 2025. More in this report.
Data Bank research shows that the Consumer Confidence Index and Business Confidence Index of the stock market have both increased significantly to around 100 points, which was last seen pre-COVID. The report said the indicators reflect the rebound in consumer spending, which is expected to anchor organic growth in most listed companies across various sectors, thus boosting investor appetite for equities. Data Bank research continued that the agricultural sector and rollout of the Big Push initiative is likely to bolster rural economic activities, injecting income and improving spending. This will be positive for top-line growth for most fast-moving consumer goods. The stock market's rally is expected to continue through the second and third quarters of 2025, driven by favorable corporate earnings and a recovery in economic activity.
A while longer in the capital market because trade activity in the secondary bond market rose to 28.9% week on week to 1.41 billion cedis, up from the 1.09 billion cedis recorded. The uptick was largely driven by end-of-month portfolio rebalancing by banks. Here's a report.
According to Data Bank research, the February 2027 bond remained the most traded, contributing 23% of total volumes, with its average yield easing to 20.7%. Overall, the 2027-2030 papers dominated with a 72% share, clearing at an average yield to maturity of 20%. Longer-dated 2031-2038 maturities made up 28%, with yield to maturity easing to 21.06%. Databank research anticipates subdued trading volumes as investors adopt a cautious stance ahead of May 2025 headline inflation data release.
You're still watching Business Live. We have more for you after this break. Hello again. The Ghana Statistical Service has indicated that it has made significant progress on providing government with the needed data to aid its 24-hour economy. It says it will be able to soon provide more accurate data on the country's employment situation. Government statistician Dr. Alhassan Idrisu was speaking to journalists at the launch of Phase 2 of the 2025 Integrated Business Establishment Survey at Winneba in the Central Region.
When we collect the data will be used to actually inform policy making or policy formulation. But it would also be used to inform implementation of programs and policies. The data would also be used in monitoring and evaluation. And eventually, we want to see the data that we collect actually result in the outcomes of the people that we all serve. At the end of the day, we are all chasing development, and development is about the people. And you see that the people have improved if their standard of living or development outcomes haven't improved. You need data to be able to track all of these along the line. More specifically with the IBEST, for example, we've had initial engagement with the executive with regards to the 24-hour economy, and definitely the information or the data we'll collect from the IBEST will definitely inform the implementation of the 24-hour economy, the tracking of the progress government is making on it, etc., etc. But also, we are going to engage not just government, we are going to engage the business community, because this is data about businesses, right? So we engage the business community so that businesses can also have access to the data we'll collect for planning purposes, so that they would also use it to make decisions at the business level to optimize their growth, to optimize their production, optimize their profitability, etc., etc.
Board Chairman of MTN Ghana Foundation, Professor Franklin Menu, has urged Ghanaians to take initiative in addressing community challenges rather than relying solely on government or big corporations. Speaking at the MTN Heroes of Change Grand Finale, he stressed that meaningful change can begin with individuals, even those with modest resources. Here's a report.
The Bardi Beach Hotel was filled with emotion and celebration as MTN Ghana hosted the grand finale of its flagship Heroes of Change initiative. The event honored ordinary Ghanaians who have made extraordinary contributions to health, education, and community development with very limited resources. In an interview with board chairman of the MTN Ghana Foundation, Professor Franklin Menu encouraged individuals to take initiative and drive change in their communities.
There are a lot of problems in our communities, but we always seem to look to government or big corporations and so on. What we are saying as a foundation with the Heroes of Change is that individuals can also make a difference. I mean, you saw the people who came there. Most of them have nothing, but in their communities, they've done what? Made a difference.
Chief Corporate Services and Sustainability Officer Ajua Efiye Wiafe underscored the business value of social impact, community engagement, and inclusive growth. She described this year's competition as one of the most competitive to date, with compelling stories highlighting grassroots innovations and civic leadership.
It was as competitive as any other year. The judges, even in the digital category, the difficulty that they had selecting a winner, for which they had to select, two of them. The MTN Foundation is doing a lot. As we all know, we focus on education, on health, economic empowerment. In the space of education, we've been giving our Bright scholarships every year. This year, no different. We are giving 300 scholarships to students and 200 to teachers because we need to make sure that as we are building digital skills, we also have teachers who can teach the people who go into the ICT and STEM fields. We have partnered with the University of Ghana, the Agric department of the University of Ghana, to have a smart farm, which will be able to train the youth on the street, and that is the point, to be able to give them employable skills.
Winner of the prestigious award and founder of the ARC Foundation, Dr. Angela Dramina Abuaje, emphasized the deep economic and social cost of abuse and neglect, cost often invincible yet felt across the workforce and national productivity.
My fulfillment comes from seeing people transformed after we have tried to assist them. But for somebody or a company like MTN, through their foundation, to recognize it, I mean, it's a high thing. It's an honor. Ghana loses millions of dollars because of what happens to abused people, the treatment, the time lost from work. ISA tells us we are losing almost $200 million a year. And I think we need to pay more attention to it.
The MTN Heroes of Change initiative continues to spotlight grassroots leadership, reminding the nation that real change often begins with just one person willing to act.
That's it for Business Life. I am Pius Kojobaka. We have more for you when you log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Always a delight serving you.